Hello everyone, here at OS Reviews. In this retro review, we'll be revisiting the Samsung Doubletime i857. This was a smartphone released back in 2011, and it was really Samsung's first dual-screen phone that I think many of us have since forgotten. With rumors of the upcoming Samsung Galaxy S10 having another folding dual-screen design, I thought it'd be a good chance to revisit this unique but largely forgotten mid-end smartphone from Samsung back in the day. So again, the secondary display is actually on the inside of this phone, as opposed to being, let's say, something that you can put together to create a larger single-panel display. That concept we've seen before on the Kyocera Echo, as well as on the ZTE Axon M. Both of them, however, have this, again, bezel in the center that stitches the two screens together, which makes the experience not as seamless as what we want to see. But again, Samsung's implementation is a little bit more quirky and strange. One screen on the inside, one on the outside, both have the same size and the same resolution. So starting with the hardware of the handset, again, this was really a mid-end slash entry-level smartphone. It ran on Android 2.2 Froyo, which back in 2011 was even outdated. It also had Samsung's proprietary TouchWiz on top of Android, also had a Qualcomm single-core 800 MHz processor, coupled with the Adreno 205 as the GPU. The camera on the back was a 3.2 megapixel sensor with autofocus, but no LED flash or self-portrait mirror, and it had only 256 megabytes of built-in RAM, along with the same 256 megabytes of built-in flash storage, luckily expandable via a micro SD card. So on the top, there's a standard 3.5mm headphone jack, along with a power on-off switch. On the left-hand spine, there's access to a dedicated volume rocker, micro USB for charging on the bottom, and that's pretty much it. Behind the battery door, you'll find access to the removable battery, which is 1,350 milliamp hours, but unfortunately, there is no front-facing camera, so there's no real selfies or video chatting on this phone. So flipping it open, we have a form factor that's, again, pretty interesting. It reminds me a bit of a small laptop or maybe a UMPC, and the hinge can open up at 3 different angles. This is the first angle. It can also stand upright at kind of 90 degrees, depending on how you want to hold it, and it can also lie completely flat like this. So it's actually quite interesting there, and obviously we have a full QWERTY keyboard on the inside. The benefit of having a folding design like this is there's much more space to incorporate a larger keyboard compared to something that has a slide-out form factor, which is more squished. As a result, the keyboard on the Samsung Doubletime was definitely one of its highlights. The keys themselves, although they aren't super raised above the surface of the unit, are very large, they're tactile, they're responsive, and the layout is comfortable and easy to type on. The screen itself on both panels are bright, and there's no real problems as far as viewing angles are concerned, even though they aren't, super AMOLED in terms of their contrast. It performs all right. So the reason why Samsung also went with this particular design is really because there were many prior phones by Samsung and LG in the same era, such as the LG Envy series, which looks like this, which were actually very popular as a feature phone form factor. So Samsung's reasoning for the time was they could make a version that runs on Android to teens, as well as people really interested in having a keyboard but don't want to shell out larger sums of money for an absolute flagship. And despite the pink accent on the Doubletime, it was an exclusive in the United States with AT&T. A little strange because this seems more like T-Mobile's colors. It's magenta. But something also a little neat is that you can actually rotate the display's orientation, even the external one, when you're in the main screens here. There were quite a few bloatware apps pre-installed, however, because of AT&T, and you'll find access to things like a QR code scanner, there's AT&T Navigator, which takes advantage of the built-in GPS chipset, Yellow Pages, and Samsung's apps such as Samsung's Memo Pad, Samsung's Music app, and Samsung's Voice Recorder. So again, it's definitely not clean or near stock at all, but since it's Samsung, we kind of have to expect that. Otherwise, you can see here in terms of general navigation, the phone still seems to be fairly decent. It's not actually as slow as you'd think with only 256 megabytes of RAM on board. You can see that all the navigation for the most part seems to be keeping up, and the screen is quite sensitive. You can see that the overall image quality is quite grainy and has a kind of darkened tone to it. So this is by far from one of Samsung's better quality sensors on a phone because, again, of the budget pricing. However, since it is an autofocus sensor, it does at least produce some decent details even if you're close up or far away from the objects. The interface here is also very much customized by Samsung. It's quite easy to use. You can check out a few different scene selection modes, such as a night mode, a candlelight mode. You can change the exposure level as well as adjust kind of the resolution yourself. These screens are mirrored, so they basically transfer back and forth between each other. So for instance, if I have something like a calculator open, I then open it up into the internal display, we have the same app now popped inside. Multitasking on Android 2.2 was also quite primitive, but you needed to hold down on a home key for a few seconds, and this is what that looks like. You can tap back and forth to go between different applications that you're using, and then switch back and forth. So next, let's take a quick look at the video playback experience, and unfortunately, you can tell that inside there are no internal speakers that are facing towards you. This is basically just wasted space, so it still blasts out sound from the bottom of the phone. So audio quality is really average. I would say it distorts a little bit at higher volumes, it doesn't have that much bass, and it's easy to cover up. But at least it does get, again, quite loud, and you can tell that, again, watching videos is actually pretty enjoyable just because you can rest it on a surface and not have to hold it using your hands. But obviously the screen size is quite small next to a modern-day phone. Here it is next to a 5.5-inch device, so you can see kind of the difference there in terms of screen real estate. However, the same can't be said about more complex pages like the New York Times. If you're trying to load up the desktop site, it will crash or give you an error message like web page is not available, as you can see here. Other uses where having this form factor makes sense include an alarm clock, so you can actually set it up so it stands upright. You can also play back a slideshow, play back music, and it can just sit there on a desk. Other elements of the phone, including the call quality, still remain quite good because it's not an area that really changes. Reception quality of the double time seems to be fair. Wi-Fi signal strength is a little weak compared to modern day phones because it doesn't have dual band Wi-Fi. But the point of this video isn't to necessarily say that the double time is a phone you should pick up now, but rather to remind you and to revisit again a design that we've been seeing from Samsung before, which is having a dual screen device. So a lot of these ideas that we're seeing in smartphones and mobile devices aren't completely new to the market. They're basically just recycled, and once you've seen enough of them, you kind of see where inspiration from past devices come into newer ones. I do think that there's a lot of potential there, and at least it can help us kind of break away from the slab form factor that we've been sitting at for many, many years now, and provide some more variety on the market, which can always be a good thing. So you can check out more details about this particular phone in the description box below if you're interested. Thanks for watching this video here at OS Reviews. That's been our revisited look at the Samsung Double Time, kind of Samsung's first dual screen smartphone.